Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
Tuesday, today, we are doing a people's poll. We've done the poll, and we're talking about a topic of your choosing. I'm trying to remember, James, the last time we did a people's poll. It's been a while ago.
Towards the end of the season or something,
last one. Long time ago. So we did a poll, as we do, on Twitter, put it out there. The people have spoken. Do you want to give them the question, the three choices, and what won?
So we gave Twitter users the chance to vote on a certain price point in terms of for us to just have a discussion about the players in that area. There was 4 to 4.5 million defenders, 5 to 5.5 million midfielders, and 5.5 to 6 million forwards, and just under 50% of users voted for the defenders option, which I'm a little bit surprised about, purely because there's been a lot of coverage in pre-season. And I think when you're trying to pick your team at the start of a season, there's a lot of talk about 4.0s and 4.5s. And listen, just off one game week, there's a little bit of change of thought. There's more 4.0s that we thought would play at the week. There was more 4.0s that played at the weekend than we thought there would be. But I thought that the midfielder choice would have been really interesting because there hasn't been a real kind of discussion on the 5s to the 5.5s. We've spoken a bit about people like Mbuemo. It would have been really nice to kind of sit down and really compare people in and around that area. But the people have spoken, so defenders is the choice. And I'd like to kick off by saying, why do we think this has happened? Because we had a question on our Patreon podcast yesterday about the idea of dropping Trent down 3 or 3.5 million to begin already to get the idea of, can I fit in a Lukaku? Can I get a Son in with Fernandes and Salah, for example? Is that why we think this has won the vote already?
Yeah, I would say so. I think the first thing is, the reason we want to talk about cheaper players is powering down to get, at this point, some people you have a kind of 2 to 3 premium players above 10 million in price, and you want to fit the third or fourth, depending on how your squad's structured. Firstly, forwards I never think would win because you only have 3 striker spots. And so if you're only cheaping out on potentially 1 player, not 2 or 3. And so making a decision on just who's the best single cheap player is fairly straightforward, because the other forwards that are performing quite well will be 7.5 or what have you. It's only 1 cheap forward, so the discussion becomes about 1 player. So I never thought forwards would ever get into the equation. Your 4.5 million defenders, more than your 4 million defenders, because your 4 million defenders really your 5th defender sitting on the bench. Your 4.5 million defenders can score between 120 and 140 points in a season. Your 5.5 midfielders don't often. And you can get away with having Trent 3 4.5s and a 4.0 if you really wanted to. But I don't think you could do the same in your midfield. Have Salah 3 5.5 or 6 or 6.5s, and then 1 ringer in a Basuma or something. So I think the defenders offer up more points per pound, and people are more willing to go deeper into their playing squad with the cheaper player than they would be with their midfielders and their attackers. I think you're much more nervous having a 6 million or 5.5 million midfielder than you are 4.5 million defender. I mean, I've already got 2 4.5 million defenders in my squad, and I'm happy to get a third, to be honest with you.
How do you feel about the ones you've got?
Luke Ayling, he stuck it in the top corner from 35 yards, so I'm pretty happy with him. Leeds are funny. Despite the 5-1 defeat, it doesn't put me off them at all for the following week, because they can just bounce back. Just take it on the chin and move on. So very comfortable with Luke Ayling. Very similar to Stuart Dallas last year. I feel like he's set and forget for the year, and I can have him in there. If Leeds are a bit leakier, then I'll have a look at it. But Luke Ayling for me is fine. Ben White. Ben White as a player. Sorry, that was a sigh about Arsenal more than it was about Ben White.
I know it was.
But Arsenal are flat track bullies at home against lower league opposition generally. When they play teams in the bottom half of the table at home, they're generally reasonably okay and defensively reasonably okay. I think when Gabriel comes back into the team alongside him, it'll be a completely different conversation compared to having Pablo Mari there. And if Partey was fit as well, I think they'd be defensively a bit more stable. So I don't mind having Ben White in there as well. Although I can't see either of the two of them getting into my team for a couple of weeks.
You make a very interesting point, though, in terms of Arsenal and flat track bully and the idea. I'm just looking at Arsenal's fixtures, home fixtures, all the way up to game week 20. Now, obviously, they've got Chelsea this weekend. But after that, we've kind of mentioned there's a good run from game week 4. And I think this is particularly important for budget options like Ben White. So their home fixtures up all the way into January: Norwich, Tottenham, Palace, Watford, Newcastle, Southampton, West Ham, Wolves. Good run.
Yeah, it's decent enough. There's a couple of difficult games in there, but that's all right. Yeah.
Well, you can definitely stick the 4.5 player in there like White. He's obviously, Adidas, not really a player or a position or a price point that you really want to be fucking about with, basically.
Correct.
So for those of us, kind of what you said about Luke Ayling, who I've got as well, the fact that I left him on the bench and he scored at the weekend really doesn't bother me, because the first thing I'm thinking is, oh, there's going to be some interest in him. They've just got out of a difficult fixture. Their run's getting better. They've got a good couple, then Liverpool, then a really good run. So they'll be interested in him naturally because he scored a goal early in the season. So yeah, there is a little bit of that already, because he's likely to go up in price in the next couple of weeks, if not this week. Yeah, you can sit there for a while and I forget about it. And obviously, in his case, you play him, you don't play him, depending on you make up your squad. He's definitely a player I think you could play most weeks. The fact that he didn't get any attacking returns last year is startling.
Yep.
The other player I've obviously got defensively in the price bracket is Tsimikas.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already laughing. Clean sheet of the weekend. We spoke about this. Any return for him playing in the Liverpool team at 4.0 is going to go up in price. We'd said it was far, even though his ownership grew really high, it was far more likely he was going to go to 4.1 rather than 3.9. I think there's a chance, even if they'd have conceded at the weekend, he still might have been going up in price, just purely as a Liverpool defender and with another good fixture this week.
Yeah, I think people will be judging what they saw with their eyes and, wow, he's taken a few corners here and he's quite attacking. So it's worth,
as we said, more crosses than Trent on Saturday.
Yep. So I think it was very likely, even if they hadn't kept a clean sheet, that he would have gone up in price for sure. And I think the thing with Tsimikas is, if people are thinking as a fifth defender, if I get on him now and I know he's out of the team in 3 weeks or so, doesn't matter, third on the bench, job done till a wild card, which could only be maybe for some people 3 or 4 weeks after that.
Of course, Tsimikas creates a different dilemma to what we used to. Once you get the guy in there, the Lundströms, the Wan-Bissakas, who obviously do well when they're playing, they just stay and you forget about it. And in particularly, say in John Lundström's case, you obviously play the fella quite a lot. Tsimikas, we know, is going to give us an issue. That's a certainty. When Andrew Robertson's back to 100% fitness, even if that's not till game week 6 or game week 7 or something, whenever he's back, he's going back in the team. There's not a doubt about it. So it's going to be a problem. Now, for those wildcarding early, it's a very easy solution. Hopefully by then he'll be at least 4.2. You take the money, you sell him, you move it on. For those who don't, it's a different problem. One, because you've now got a defender that you're possibly currently playing who's not going to be playing. So you need to think about the other option in your squad. But of course, importantly, it's the blocking of the Liverpool player as well. So I know that at the moment, I can't go Jota or Mane or Firmino or Van Dijk. I'm blocked completely. So he's not someone that I want to be sitting there for, even if I didn't wildcard till game week 19, hypothetically, he's not someone I really want sitting there all the time. Unless I'm really in a position comfortably onwards to go, right, well, I'm staying with just the 2 Liverpool players. Or, obviously, he could stay there if I decided, as many might, is to get rid of Trent, maybe, and just open up the money. But my feeling with Trent is, you know how it is. I just look at him versus midfielders and forwards at the same price, and I don't see any of them getting near him.
No.
That's why he wouldn't be my priority to come down. As said, we had more 4.0s than we expected to play. at the weekend. Just want to touch on them a little bit. So obviously we know about Schmidt is now 4.1. Daniel Amati played for Leicester. Clean sheet as well. So that'll pick up some attention. Obviously, Yannick Vestergaard was registered in time and came on as a substitute. And I saw on our Slack channel last night, Aaron Lago made a really good point in terms of obviously the power that you have, West Ham, from set pieces and stuff. Vestergaard's definitely going to play at West Ham.
Yeah.
There's no way he's going to leave him out.
Yeah, he's got over a week to prepare. I can see Amati dropping out very soon.
Well, Amati stays in the team, I think, if they play a back three, which as I suggested on the podcast yesterday, might be something they do. He would play to the right of the three. I think Siunchu would play left and Vestergaard would play at the centre of it. Vestergaard's definitely going to play because Siunchu's not the biggest either, right? Obviously, everyone's tall compared to me, but he's not big for a centre half. Vestergaard can dominate in that area. He's definitely going to play at West Ham, even if he wasn't 100% fit. But I'd imagine he's had pre-season at Southampton. He should be. So Amati, we know, is dangerous. Obviously, even if they did go to a back three, Johnny Evans is hopeful being back for sort of game week 4. He's not going to stay in the team.
No.
But he's another one. That's probably an easier one to leave. But then they're also a team who, at various points, it might open up. I mean, Vestergaard's 5. It's not that expensive. Ryan Bertrand, when he returns from isolation. Ricardo Pereira, I've got. Then you've got the attacking players. You could block yourself off free, Leicester. One that probably won't block you, which I think is the most interesting at the moment, is Livramento, who clean sheet wipeout. Matt Samuel's coming on Clash the Correspondence. We're recording tomorrow for the podcast on Thursday, and I'll really be asking him about this because I actually think if I was to buy one now, it's possibly him. If I was starting new, if I was wildcarding this week for every reason, I'd possibly take a chance on him because I think he's the one with the biggest long-term potential. The fact that he started over Cole Walker-Peters at the weekend was surprising. And I need to find out why that was. Was Walker-Peters short of fitness in pre-season? I don't think so. I remember seeing him score a goal in pre-season for Southampton. So was it just a case that Livramento's actually been picked over Walker-Peters? Which I find particularly surprising when, having lost Vestergaard and Bertrand, that's a new defence. You've now removed another one from that defence as well. He's extremely highly rated. As we mentioned a few times, he was player of the year in Chelsea's academy team. They didn't want to let him go. He's gone in the hope of getting first team football, and he's in the team from game week 1. Of course, the other beauty with him is as a 4.0, you probably ain't going to play him for a while. You're not going to have that dilemma with the fixture Southampton have got, but it really could open up.
Yeah, in the next 6, you're talking about Manchester United, West Ham, City and Chelsea, the other 2 being Newcastle and Wolves. So 4 of those games, I can see them conceding goals. Manchester United next.
I could see them conceding all 6, to be honest, mate.
Yeah, I mean, Manchester United next at home probably brings back a few nightmares, to be honest with you. So
I imagine Manchester United away will probably give them a few more, mate. but obviously, if he's just going to play, it wouldn't even matter if he's 1 point every week. That's perfect. Yeah. So I think he's the one that probably stands out the most. Shane Duffy, we mentioned yesterday on the podcast, which was really surprising, suddenly in the team, apparently man of the match, according to a lot of Brighton fans. Does he stay in? I think for those who didn't listen to the podcast yesterday, you dive in a little bit deeper, and with the players that had absent, you remember that their opponents were Burnley, and there might well have been an influence in that. Whereas, say, playing Watford this weekend is tricky fast forwards with movement. It's a different issue and a different problem, and not necessarily suitable to Duffy. But it would be harsh for him to lose his place, but that's not one where you go to, is it? I think as well in Brighton's case, unlike Southampton, with Brighton, there are 4.5s you are genuinely interested in that are probably worth, it's probably safer to pay the extra for Joel Veltman, for example. That doesn't really feel like the case with Southampton. So again, you're potentially blocking yourself if you go down the Shane Duffy route.
And also, obviously, don't forget, 25% of the game own Sanchez in goal. And so doubling up on Brighton defensively, I'd avoid it.
You're not going to play. With 4.0s, really, you are just looking for minutes. If you had a 4.0 get you 1 point every single week, he's interesting. What was of those who were in this, Manquillo was the highest scoring last year, about 19 points or so.
Okay.
Which he's not going to get a look in at Newcastle unless arguably Jacob Murphy or someone else gets injured in the back line. So you're not expecting big points in this position. I mean, there's a perfect case, right? Those were priced up. Manquillo, 19 points. Shimikas and Amati already on 6. So if you started with these guys, I think we're quite happy with that. Do you want to talk about Ben Johnson a bit, Suj?
The fact that he played 1 minute against Newcastle and excuse me, he gives cover for Soufal, but he's not going to be starting games. And having played his 1 minute on Sunday at Newcastle, he ended up playing pretty much the whole game last night for the under 23s against Arsenal. So he's a backup. He's a backup. If Soufal was injured for whatever reason, you could see him getting on the pitch. He may and has regularly come on late in games to shore things up a little bit. But for me, I'd take Livramento over Ben Johnson. The only thing he offers is a bit of flexibility. He can play left side or right side. And if we pick up an injury, he could break into the team. But I can see him playing more early stages of Europa. And like I said, they literally just gave him minutes last night.
What's the status with Masaraku?
He also played the whole game last night against the under-23s and looked pretty lively as well, to be fair.
Because obviously he'll be the cover for Cresswell, won't he?
As well, yeah.
So you're looking...
he's fit almost.
Yeah, you're looking at Johnson for Soufal.
Yeah. And don't forget, we've got Ryan Fredericks there as well on the right-hand side.
That's very true.
On certain occasions, potentially when we were playing against pacier attacks, Moyes likes to use Ryan Fredericks because he knows he's got the recovery pace to keep up with people. So, yeah, Ben Johnson is a no.
Crapid. The other one to get minutes at the weekend, I say minutes, he started, and it was a real surprise, was Key Hoover at Wolves, who started in place of Nelson Semedo. And it's really interesting because Semedo there'd been a lot of talk about in pre-season, and I think if they'd have had a better fixture list, he would have been spoken about a lot more and would have been in a lot more teams. So I spoke to Bradley, our Wolves correspondent, and he said he thought Semedo would probably come back in. But if he didn't, and Hoover played again against Tottenham at weekend, then he'd have to look at it and say that Hoover was now first choice over Semedo, which would come from absolutely nowhere. Now, the other thing that's important is Wolves are playing 3 at the back at the moment, which isn't the system that we think Bruno Lage wants to play. So eventually, perhaps when the fixtures ease, that might change to a back 4 again. I don't know if that causes different doubts, but I'll be speaking to Bradley on Sunday and getting more information because I'm going up to Wolves, so I'll see him and find out what's going on there. I mean, his opinion is Hoover's not ready and Semedo should be first choice. So he was really surprised that Hoover played. That's one to watch. Because obviously from game week 4, we've spoken about this, Wolves have a phenomenal run. And if he's going to stay in the team, then that is really interesting, particularly for those who are obviously in a wild card around about that period. He might be the one that people are not speaking about at the moment that suddenly becomes, whoa, where did that come from? And now they've got a great run of fixtures. So I could see that, honestly, if Hoover played the next 2 games, I could see people really thinking about dropping to him in game week 4. Because that's what you want ideally is Hoover and Livramento, 8 million on the bench, playing every week. That'll do. Yeah. That's the danger with that is if that's the sort of thing that ends up happening, it's what everybody will do. You're not going to be a rocket scientist trying to figure this out. So I think in terms of short-term interest for the 4.5s, it's very much dependent on what happens with the 4s, right? We know Amati will come out. We know Shimikas will come out. I'm pretty sure Duffy will come out. Johnson's only going to be as a backup option. Livramento and Hoover are the 2 really to watch at the moment. A few of the other 4.0s to keep an eye on, the 2 Williams. Nico at Liverpool. If you haven't seen Nico's goal for Liverpool in a behind closed doors match yesterday, you have to see it. It's a phenomenal goal. And Brandon Williams, obviously, at Manchester United. Whereas if these kids get a loan to somewhere that's interesting, they might suddenly become options and first choice somewhere. Yeah, if they suddenly rock up at Norwich or Watford or whomever, Brentford, they might suddenly become first choice options. With strong rumours about Brandon Williams to Norwich, but that seems to have gone really cold.
Yep.
But United have said they're keeping Dalot now to give back up to Wan-Bissaka. You got Tellers will give back up to Shaw. So Brandon Williams is not really going to get a look in with what United have got depth-wise now. So he needs to go out on loan. Nico Williams is not really the same case. He probably is still back up to Trent. Although I suspect with all the centre-backs now back fit, probably more likely just stick Joe Gomez out at right back in the short term if that was to become a problem with Trent. Javier Manquillo, as mentioned, may get the odd minutes during the season. The one who didn't play at the weekend, who we were hoping was going to play, was our friend from Norwich, Big Andy. Omobamidele. I've got it on lockdown now, mate.
Okay, fair play. I was ready to help you out there, but you got it.
Hanley and Gibson are first choice. That was always going to be the case. Obviously, Hanley, he returned in time for the game at the weekend. They will stay the first choice pairing. Omobamidele will only get a look in now if one of them becomes injured, but you should be aware of it. Again, Norwich's fixtures really ease up from game week 5. So if one of them two did get a long-term injury between now and then, he's one definitely to keep on the radar. I can't see anyone else from the 4.0s becoming of interest really during the season, other than potentially Phil Bardsley at Burnley should something happen to Matt Lowton. But Matt Lowton's definitely first choice. The others can't really see getting a look in.
Agreed.
If you had to buy a new 4.5 now, Suj, who would it be?
Well, this is an interesting one, James, because I always felt that there was more choice and more options in that 4.5 million price range. And then now I look at it and I look at the players that are in that price range versus who played at the weekend and who performed well at the weekend. I think that it's all a little bit of a meh. Like there's not a massive amount there that I think, oh, all right, fine. Like I currently own White, like I mentioned earlier. So I'm not going to go into Arsenal and double up with Callum Chambers, for example. He's the only other one at
Arsenal
4.5.
defensive double up.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen, right? So I look at players that I think will be consistent over a period. Don't laugh, James, but Spurs have a few 4.5s that I think are decent enough quality that might play. Thank you for not laughing. And
I did that enough yesterday.
Mason Holgate potentially at Everton. Again, it's all based on what he has around him that make me consider him. Matt Lowton served me well in the past. Again, it's if I needed to, it doesn't particularly fill me with the most amount of joy buying him. And there isn't much else there that's filling me with I want to really go for it. The option for me had he been fit would have been Tyrique Mitchell.
Yeah, I mean that would be the exciting one, wouldn't it? He's not going to be back till they play Brentford or Leicester in 4 or 5, and I think even that's kind of when he's hoping to be back. That's still got to be debatable. They're clearly trying to be so careful with him. The thing is, as well, his injury is a hamstring, right? And if you take the pace away from Tyrique Mitchell, you're taking an extraordinary amount of ability away from, because that kid is such a flyer. So they can't have him keep having hamstring injuries like, say, Dele Alli did, and that kind of really restricts his pace and stuff. Yeah, that would be the exciting one. But Joel Veltman obviously didn't play for Brighton at the weekend, but that's because he was a close contact, was in isolation. He'll probably be back for the Watford game at the weekend. And I guess if you're not on Sanchez, he's probably just about the standout, particularly if for whatever reason you had an injury there at the moment. You look at the next 3 of Watford at home, Everton at home, Brentford away, it's decent. Leicester at home, Palace away afterwards, even Arsenal at home, Norwich away. They're good. They're good up to game week 9 where they've got City, Liverpool. So that's someone you could put in and you could play the majority of the games at the moment. So I think for me, because I haven't got any Brighton defensively, and I know a lot of other people do, I think that's probably still the first place I would go, is go to Veltman, actually. I'd go Veltman over Webster. I've no concern about the fact he didn't play at the weekend. I'm sure we'll get an update in terms of his availability going into this week. It'll be a yes or no. And if it was a yes, if it was a yes, then I would buy it. I mean, there is no position where that's happening for me this week unless I've got 3 or 4 injuries. But I think that's where I'd go. If that's the first place, if I had an injury and wanted to get a 4.5, Veltman's the way I'd go. But if I had positive news on Livramento, I'd rather come down. and just have him sit there. I think I wouldn't want him playing at the moment though. Webster's, we said, is an alternative. Few names to throw in. I mean, we joke about Arsenal, but in all seriousness, having mentioned those home games they've got all the way into January, if you're looking for a rotation option now, Ben White's fine. He's no frills. He's not going to get you attacking returns, but you are going to have the odd 6-7 pointer in there, I'm sure. Want to throw Connor Cody into the mix?
Yeah.
At 4.5. Lock, we assume, at Wolves. Highline is a bit of a concern, something that they're trying to play, and it's not something I think Connor Cody really wants to be a part of. But those fixtures still from 4 all the way to 14 are absolutely brilliant, aren't they? So if Semedo obviously comes back in for Hoover, then Cody at 4.5 shouldn't be overlooked, but you should be conscious of the way they're trying to play defensively. He's not necessarily suitable to Cody's attributes. And if Lays really pushes it through, it might be that he wants quicker players to play the position in the long term. But I think it would be too much at the moment to take him out. Yep. He's just got to adjust as a footballer. You are right to mention the Tottenham players, Tanganga and Eric Dyer at the moment. I feel that Davinson Sanchez 4.5. I want to 5. I'm not sure what Davinson's price is.
He's more, I think. Davinson
Is
Sanchez,
he 5?
right?
Yeah, I thought he was. Ignore that then. So Christian Romero.
If Rodon was to get into the team at 4.5, maybe.
Well, the guys are ahead of him now, aren't they? And purely on the basis that, in all seriousness, Dyer and Sanchez both played really well actually on Sunday.
Sorry, Sanchez is 4.5.
Oh, he is 4.5. I thought he might be.
Dyer, Tanganga, and Sanchez 4.5.
So I think Romero's likely to be the right-sided centre back. So I think Dyer will probably get favouritism. Romero has good recovery pace as well. So that's not so much of an issue with Dyer, who on a bad day really can turn like a forklift truck trying to do a reverse manoeuvre. So I think Dyer being the left-sided centre-back gives him the favouritism at the moment. There might be something in terms of language that might be beneficial for Romero to play with Sanchez in the short term, being that they're both South American. What language do Colombians speak, Suj?
Spanish.
What language do Argentinians speak?
Also Spanish.
There you go. So there's a point in there that might be interesting. That could it be that one of them moves to the left side? Sanchez has played left-sided centre-back for Tottenham, so it's not a case we can't. I'm sure Romero probably can as well. I just think Dyer's probably got the favouritism at the moment. Obviously, Tottenham can go to a back three, and they could all play, which would be interesting. If it's a back three, I'm not sure that we should expect Jaffa Tanganga at right wing back, who was outstanding for us on Sunday. At the moment, he's definitely got the shirt at right back. There was an agreement a couple of weeks ago for him to go on loan to Galatasaray, but Jaffa thankfully didn't want to go, and at the moment, it's his shirt to lose. There's been a long-term agreement in place with a Japanese player, Tomiyasu, from Bologna, who can play right back or right-sided centre-back. Apparently, that's now off, which means either Tottenham have decided they're happy to go with Tanganga, which is a possibility, or they've obviously found other options to go for at right back. Tottenham are definitely trying to buy at least one more defender before this window shuts, and you need to be aware of that.
I think that if they buy someone new and he comes in at a price, he'll probably come in at 5 million anyway. So we've seen it with a lot of new defenders introduced into the game.
It's more a case of one of these 4.5 is going to be an option. The answer is probably yes. Probably one of them will be, but don't go there at the moment. Don't go there till at least the window's shut until you've got some clarity. You mentioned Mason Holgate. Mm-hmm. One of the things we obviously mentioned yesterday, and the word I get from Evertonians is probably Mina and Godfrey, probably first choice.
Yeah, I get that.
But Seamus Coleman, you have mentioned a number, is he going to get through 38 games without picking up an injury? I guess with what they have at the moment, Holgate would potentially be the cover at right back, although we've seen Godfrey do it as well. Right to mention the Burnley players, of course, Matt Lowton and Charlie Taylor, but they've got a dog of a run. And it never really clears up to be brilliant for them, Burnley. And Burnley are the sort of ones, I'm not sure ever comfortable leaving their defensive players on the bench, because they can actually nick a clean sheet in any game. I'd go Taylor over Lowton. I think one to keep an eye on is Tyrique Mitchell at Crystal Palace, who looks like he's got that spot at left back on lockdown now, but they're rough till up to sort of game week 11 or so. But it's one possibly to keep an eye on, I think, further down the season. Max Aaron, similarly at Norwich, they've got a good run from game week 5. Llorente at Leeds, as and when he gets back fit, but those who've got Alien are obviously not going to consider. And the only other one I noted to put on a watch list was Kiko Famineer of Watford, who's not in the team. He wasn't at the weekend, but I think that was fitness related. And he's one, but I think he's probably still the standout 4.5. Sierralta perhaps, but he's a yellow card magnet as and when he comes back in.
This 4.5 million bracket is a real pit of players that would be great options if not injured. I mean, we should give a shout out to the ones that are potentially good picks but injured. Johnny at Wolves.
Yeah, absolutely.
A good FPL asset.
Absolutely, yeah.
Masuaku at West Ham, when he plays, is a decent asset. Talked about Llorente, is injured. Fofana is injured. Tariq Lamptey is injured. And you're thinking, like, prior to the season starting, these were all players that were getting, could have any of those 5 that I've just mentioned would be decent 4.5s, yet they're all sitting on the treatment table at the moment, which is a bit of a problem. So if those guys start coming back into their starting 11s, respectively, whoever they play for, Johnny isn't coming back for a while. Masuaku, obviously, I mentioned he played. Llorente isn't far away. Lamptey, 3 or 4 weeks. These are all better picks than some of the names we've mentioned, but you can't really go there until you know they're fit and starting each week.
There are certain clubs where you can look at where you think, I don't think they're doing any business there. Like if you take Burnley with Loughton and Bardsley and Charlie Taylor and Eric Peters, and I look at them, I think, you are not doing any business in the fullback area. And there's a fair chance that Burnley won't do any business anyway. There are other clubs like Tottenham. I think Wolves are another one, actually, where you have to be a bit conscious that they might do some business between now and the window. And these options could suddenly become non-options. It's the other reason I like the Livramento, actually, because if he has really genuinely got the shirt over Cole Walker-Peters, they're only going to go and buy someone else if they let Walker-Peters go. And if they let Walker-Peters go, presumably it's because they really believe this kid's going to go and be first choice for them. That's why I think he's probably the most interesting one at the moment. But
agree with you there.
I need to get Matt's opinion and see covers on why he played at the weekend. Is there something quite simple as to why Cole Walker-Peters was only a substitute? Defensively, although it's grim, I'd possibly still be looking at Ben White as well, as I said. Because of them home games for so long, just sit there, good cover for when you need it.
Indeed. There we go. Listeners, there was a rundown for you of cheap defenders. We'll be keeping our eyes peeled and talking about them on the main pod each and every week as well. So make sure wherever you're listening to the podcast, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, blah, you subscribe to the show and you'll get notified as soon as new episodes go live. And in addition to that, if you want to leave us a review on iTunes or any of the other platforms where you can do that, that would be nice too.
Only leave us a 5-star one, though, please.
Yeah, of course. Of course, James. Tomorrow, we'll be back at you with Sky Fantasy Football for the Sky players in the game. It was a high-scoring weekend this week as well. Thursday, Clash of the Correspondents, as James mentioned, Clean Sheet Wipeout, which is our correspondent. Matt is on with Gary. Is my cat playing? Our Manchester United correspondent. We'll see how much of a good mood he's in after the big win at the weekend.
If he now wants to get Bruno in his team as well.
Yeah, exactly that. And Friday is a live, James. Ask James.
Yeah, Ask James stream will be about 3:00 UK time.
So jump on there and ask him if you can, please, particularly Mahrez versus Grealish. Or what was the other one?
Tony V. Buendia, yeah.
Or Tony V. Buendia. He particularly likes answering those questions. So
I love answering repetitive questions on players who go on to do fuck all, yeah.
My friends, stay safe. Look after yourselves. Chat for now.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Cue music, please, man child.